Next is action on beginning a 4K program.
Also moved.
Second.
Moved by Dawn, seconded by Tom. Questions, comments?
I have a comment to make on it. I have the feeling that voting on a 4K program may be a little premature. Has anyone found out what projected enrollment will be? Will we be having 100 students or only 25? How can we plan accordingly? We also need to figure out the logistics of the program. Will the classes be held in daycares or in the grade school buildings of our district? If there's a requirement to change the daycare for this program, who would assume the bill for it? I'm not against the 4K program. I just feel that we need time to answer all the questions before we move forward and vote.
I guess my initial response to what Doug said would be that I think by voting now, we either acknowledge we're going to move forward with it or we're not going to move forward with it. So we can start having those discussions. Even regardless of which way we go, at least we know which direction we're heading. That's where I stand on it. But we need to kind of, I think it's been talked about for a long time. I think now we have to say, okay, we're either going to go forward with it or not.
Well, one of the questions I have, and first I'd like to thank Matt for all the work he did on how much we've lost, but looking at his presentations, he was saying that we have roughly 160 students that would be eligible times 0.75 times the 0.6 FTEs. We don't know if we have 160. Until a month ago, we only had 92 students coming in kindergarten. Right now with 18, we're up a little bit. But if that figure drops, how is that going to affect the projected income we're going to be making? As all of a sudden, we aren't going to be making an income, we're going to be losing money. That's, I just need, what are we going to do? We're voting on something and we want to be transparent, like we talked about last week. Take our time and look at what we're doing. It seems like we're jumping in and we don't have all the figures. We've lost a lot of money. I agree with that. Like I said, I thank him for showing that to us. But the projections for the future, right now, we don't know. How many are we going to have? I'd love to say we're going to have 100, just like, I think your proposal was 120 roughly, 160 times the 75%.
I think so,
Yeah.
but whether it's 10 or 20, you do make money.
That's the only thing I would like to see, just a survey. How many are coming in before we jump into it? And let's say, he's right, we will be making money. That's great, I have no problem. Let's say we only have 20 and the startup cost is going to be so much more than what we're going to be getting from the state. Yes, we'd get more money, but it won't offset what the program will be for 4 or 5 years. Then it doesn't pay. I just would like to see, has anybody ever surveyed anybody to see how many we'd have coming in?
Also keeping in mind though, you're going to adjust your costs to how many
And I agree,
kids you
yes.
have enrolled. So I mean, if you don't have the full enrollment you're expecting, it's not going to cost $400,000 or whatever Chris projected it to be.
362, I think, or something.
It's going to be less.
I think we've been talking about it for a full year. It's come up off and on for the past year. We've talked about benefits of it. We've seen what our Title I students have been able to do in such a program, and we will make money, as Matt just said, whether there's 10 or 80 who come to us. And I think we don't know those projections of how many students we have, even when we look at our K-8 students. When we look forward 5 years, we're doing our best estimates on that, and so I would like to see us move forward with this at this time for a vote.
Well, I would have to agree with Doug, and I would have to agree with Tom, and I would agree with you. I don't know why it's so positive of me. Here the problem I have is there is no great data showing a great increase or a need for 4K at all. Because the other problem is they're already looking at 3K, right? And then there'll be a 2K, and then they'll just take you right out of the womb, right at the hospital, right? So I don't like government in people's personal lives. Now, that being said, I don't like paying taxes either, so I'm kind of in a quandary in life. I do believe there's no detrimental harm, and there is some small advantage over a long period of time, but not a huge amount that would be for the spending the kind of money the state spends on 4K. But somebody in their wisdom decided to talk the state into it, and the state now spends money on 4K. So they automatically tax us for it. So we're paying it whether we like it or not, and other districts are using it, and we all know that on the board. The real question is whether or not it's going to cost us something to put it on. And from initial onset, yeah, it's going to cost us money because we're going to take it out of our savings, which is our fund balance. So it's a good thing that this board over the last several years now has been extremely good, and Chris has been great at saving the pennies and putting them away for a rainy day. We don't spend, we're not taxed at the max in this district. The high school district is at the max every year. If we were at the max and we had a fairly conservative fund balance, we wouldn't be able to do this at all. So we're kind of lucky in that regard that we've been very good at watching the money. That being said, if the state wants to pay us money, which we're now sending out to other districts, I think it would be better that we bring it to our district and spend the money here. But again, I have a very difficult time in that we don't have anything decided, but I agree with Tom in this respect. You have to have a vote at some point to say, are we going forward with this or not going forward with it? And give Chris some direction, because you can't stay in a gray area, wasting a lot of time and effort on something that you may never go for. So, I mean, it's very difficult for me to say, but at this point, on a financial basis only, not on an educational basis, subtly on the educational basis, I think it'll help kids slightly. And we've seen data from Ms. Hobby that went over our Title I, what do we call it, Title I preschool. And that showed you still had kids that are way above and some that were, actually did poor on a couple of them. And I agree with Joni Beck. You can't, I agree with everybody tonight, aren't I? Huh? You cannot just say, I'm going to take children at 4K. I think they learn more from their parents. Now that being, if their parents were there. In this society the way it is today, for some reason parents don't like being parents too long. And I understand it's difficult to raise children in the society we're in today. So I think it's not going to be a detrimental factor. I think it will be a positive cash flow for the district over a period of time. It will limit our ability to tax, so I don't have a problem with that, because you know what? I don't want to tax more. So in that respect, I'd have to be in favor of it right now. But I think it's only a vote to say you go forward. But with that being said, I would like to make a motion that this does not start until the school year of 15-16, which is one extra year out. I don't think we have the time to get this up and running, to have discussions with the public and the preschools about how we're going to go at this. Are we going to use a scenario where we go into local preschools and work with them? Are we going to do it in our district-wide? We need to take polls of people that are sending their kids or will send their kids to find out all these different things we don't currently know. So that's what I would like to make a motion of.
Just quickly to one of your points, I would just remind everyone, and Joni also, that it is an optional program. If you don't feel comfortable sending your child to the 4K program, you don't have to. You can keep them home.
Yes.
So it's an optional program. It's not a full-time program. It's a half-day program. It's play-based, with instruction by licensed educators. Again, you can implement it in partnership with community providers. And just when we increase enrollment, we increase state aid.
That's the bottom line right there.
The math, and that's like Dan said, the bottom line.
That's a very strange scenario. Usually a school district never gets to add a full grade. That's why it took time to come around with the numbers we're seeing. The numbers don't make sense. I agree with Deb Schroeder. Don't make sense. Why do you make more money for having just a few kids extra? The state's paying us to do this. But then again, we're paying it right now in our local taxes to the state. So to me, it would make a financial sense to go forward with something like this.
I do wish we could do it for the 14, 15 school districts, but I understand what you're saying, Dan, that if we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we need to do it well, and have everything in place, and I understand that motion.
And give people the ability to plan for the future. So if you've got a daycare, you're running it, you're planning on that income, what is your livelihood look like? What do you do? There's a lot of scenarios that Doug brought up, really need to be answered. So That's why my motion for pushing it out to the 15-16 year.
We already have a motion on the floor, so we have to.
Well, let's say,
Would you need a second on
yeah,
that?
this is to modify the motion. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just an amendment to the motion.
Okay. Dan would like to amend the original motion. Is there a second to Dan's amendment to the original?
I'll second
motion?
that.
Doug, you did? Okay. So, I have to say too, that I have deduced, I've listened to the pros and cons. I attended the Burlington Area School District listening session with Kathy Hoppy, heard everything to be said. 90% of the state does have the program already. We're paying our taxes. I deduced that by implementing the program, it's a benefit to our taxpayers, so let's do it. The motion to amend to put it off until a year from this fall is now on the table. Are there any comments on that amendment?
I'm with Dawn. I'd like to see it happen sooner than later. Again, we're losing revenue by not doing it. There's kids that aren't able to take advantage of it if we don't do it, that could be in the program.
Other comments? Vote on the amendment. The amendment is to stave off the implementation of this until a year from this fall. All in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye?
Aye. All opposed say nay. Was it unanimous? It was unanimous. Okay. Back to the original motion. And the original motion is that we implement a 4K program at Waterford Grade School District. Are there any further comments, questions on the motion?
In the interest of being transparent, the board, again, needs to realize, and I know there's support as far as limiting the ability to tax, okay? And I understand that. But every projection that I have run, okay, every projection that I have run, there's at least 1 or 2 years where you're out of money. And you're either gonna have to dig into the fund balance or go to referendum to exceed the revenue limit. You just need to understand that on the upfront end.
Yeah,
Does that happen with or 4K and without 4K?
With the 4K.
I think you're gonna hit it there eventually without working.
Eventually.
The problem is statewide right now, and we see it at both districts, statewide right now, you're getting down to the point where if the money doesn't increase at the state level per student per year, you're gonna have a lot of school districts going to referendum to exceed their limits because you've just reached the max of what you can do as far as state is concerned.
This spring, there were already some of them that did.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the future, that's all it holds in the state of Wisconsin unless something changes on the funding balance sheet, so.
Agreed. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Is it unanimous? We have an abstention? We have an abstention. Renee, Doug, abstain.
Oh,
It's not like I said that I'm against it, I just had a few questions that I'd like answered before I would jump in. Like I said, I was one of them that pushed for the Title I 4K, but, yeah, like I said, I looked at his figures, yeah, we lost money, it's just what are we projecting? We should have had a little survey ahead of time. I don't know.
That's the end of our